Well, my first influence was my mother. She was a very spiritual person, a very religious person. She just showed me by example how to take care of people, serve people, and that caught on. And we had a pretty humble beginning. I got a great education, and that's why I'm interested in education going forward. But when Jean and I were first married, we started out in the world with a hide-a-bed, a set of pots and pans, and an end table. And I was in the Navy, but we've been very fortunate since then, and I want to share that. I actually started to some degree in the Navy. I used to, whenever ship went into a port, I would find the appropriate place for people to go to church. And that got me started. And then when I got out of the Navy, I had a job in Philadelphia. And the first thing that I got involved in was the United Way, what's now called the United Way. And that was the first donation I ever made. And it's built from there. When I moved to Hartford, I continued to do that and to understand giving. The way I like to describe it is I use the word compassion. Compassion, for me, my definition of compassion is putting myself in the other person's shoes. And if you can do that and you understand what their needs are and what they're going through, I think that brings you to the point of giving. Now you have to have that to give with, but I was fortunate and had a job with a company that did very well. We had the stock options and the growth, and we shared that. Jean and I, my wife, shared that, and we shared it in a couple of ways. One was education, and the other was the food pantry sort of operations. And we continue to do that. Our favorite charities have been, and still are, the Watkinson School in Hartford, an organization called the Hartford Youth Scholars Foundation, which is promoting kids to go to college. The House of Bread, which is a soup kitchen in Hartford, and the Northwoods Stewardship Center in Vermont, which is a land trust sort of outdoor education. And the way we like to think about it is that we're involved with the House of Bread because it's so much better if you learn so much better if your stomach is full. And we like the Watkinson School and the Hartford Youth Scholars because it provides educational facilities for kids. And we've been active with that and scholarships. Fun story of the Watkinson School is that this is a 6 through 12 private school in the city of Hartford, the only one in Hartford. We needed a new classroom, and I was the chairman of the board. And the headmaster and I found an old barn in Massachusetts, and we loved it. It was an old carriage barn, part of an estate that was being sold. So I came back to the board and I said, oh, I have this wonderful carriage barn. And I described it to them, and they said, you know, Don, you come up with a lot of crazy ideas. This is the limit. We don't want anything to do with that carriage barn. So I went home and said to my wife, Jean, they don't want it. She said, "You mean you're going to let that go, that beautiful carriage barn?" Long story short, I called the guy up and I bought the carriage barn, personally. I went back to the board and I said, "Look, I bought it. The only thing I want you to do is help me sell it. If I can't answer all of your questions about access, egress, just electricity, you know, how are we going to modernize this barn?" The end of the story is that barn exists today. It is a classroom, and it's a winner, at least in my view. But it was part of the compassion idea that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the other people who were objecting to this, because not everybody in the world is crazy enough to like a carriage barn. So that's one part of it. And the other part of it is, I think you have to make it so it's the other person's idea. If it's just your idea, it doesn't fly. The end result is that we have a carriage barn called the Wilson Carriage Barn. At the Watkinson School, it is being used as a classrooms, actually, and is one of the signature buildings on the campus. We've adopted this idea that we want to support primarily education, because I think that's the root of all the issues. If we had better education all the way around, it would mitigate some of the other problems that are driven by that lack of education. If you go out and look at other needs, you understand that the poorer people in the city of Hartford, and Hartford is a poor city, you can't just solve the problem with one thing. It's families, and it's family support for the kids. It is schooling. It is a lot of things together. So I think almost no matter what you would pick, if they have good measures, you can make a difference. Our emphasis has principally been education. The most recent one has been the Hartford Youth Scholars Foundation, which is an organization that provides academic support, hands-on academic support, to get kids ready to go to high school and on to a four-year college. And the first class from high school just graduated, and there were 22 kids in that class, and 21 of them are in four-year colleges as we speak. I'm so proud of these kids. And what it shows is that if you have some parental support and you give them a chance, I don't care where they come from, they can succeed. There have been several kids who come from largely single mother families who have to get their brother or sister or sisters ready for school, feed them breakfast before they go to school. One of the best examples was, I think, the Boys and Girls Club in Asylum Hill. I was involved, I was on the fundraising committee for that facility. There were 2,000 kids in Asylum Hill neighborhood with no after-school programs. We built the Asylum Hill Boys and Girls Club facility on Sigourney Street, and it has over 2,000 members. So the kids that were sitting at home watching television because they were afraid to go out are going out, and one of the big interests is chess. There's a fellow that teaches chess, and I don't think you would have thought of that on your own. On the subject of volunteering, we are abject failures because we can never say no. And we wind up volunteering. This will sound a bit bizarre, but we have taken care of older individuals in the city of Hartford. And on several occasions, believe it or not, we would get the phone call in the middle of the night, I've fallen and I can't get out of bed, I can't get up. And 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm on, over on Albany Avenue with my wife, picking this lady up, putting her back in bed. So we will volunteer for nearly anything. But now our volunteering is pretty much in the area of the ministries of St. Patrick's St. Anthony's Church downtown and the House of Bread. I have been on probably 14 or 15 different nonprofit boards, chaired some of them, done fundraising for all of them. But all of them were exciting, and you met and worked with some wonderful people. And you had an end result, either a building or a program or supporting some renovation or what have you. Our family is big, meaning we have 9 children. We've tried to instill in them the idea of charitable giving. As I'm fond of saying, if you pay, they will come. And if you invite them to do things like serve in the soup kitchen, they'll do it. And they enjoy that, and it becomes kind of infectious. Now, I have talked with the folks here at the Hartford Foundation about their idea of holding a family educational session about how to move charity from one generation to the next, and I applaud that. I think it is hard to do. This particular generation, it's very hard to stay home and be a mother or a father. You got to have 2 incomes. You've got to say, I can't volunteer for a lot of things because I just don't have the time. And there's a lot of truth to that. So I think to have an educational session to help those children, and ours and anybody else's, to get the giving feeling is a great idea. We started the Wilson Family Fund, which is a donor-advised fund, which means that we gave the money to the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, but we have the right to advise where the earnings from that money, or actually the corpus of that money, goes. We did that because we wanted to preserve our giving, and we wanted to be able to pass it on for at least another generation. We have been giving from that fund to 4 or 5 different charities. We also do our regular charitable giving, which is something like 50 nonprofits in smaller amounts, directly from cash. There was an entity, and we made a gift to that entity anonymously, and the most fun of that gift was, well, there was 2 fun things. One, it did a great thing for the charity, but secondly, it was wonderful to sit back and watch him try to figure out who the anonymous donor was. You asked about the Children's Educational Opportunity Foundation of Connecticut, which is a scholarship fund. It's an interesting scholarship fund in that it gives 50% of tuition for kids to go to private schools, but this is for elementary school kids. We've been doing this for several years now, and each year we have approximately 400 scholarships. Hartford, New Haven,